Universe Maker's first scroll. Please view the description for trigger warnings to make sure this is content you're comfortable with. Chapter 8. 1. Hannah leaned over and let herself fall. The sudden plunge knocked her hand away from her mouth, and a high-pitched scream escaped before she could get her hand back into place. Dr. Miller looked up from her scroll. That was a different sound than she'd heard before. She pushed herself up from the desk and rushed to the portal's edge. She stretched her neck to see as much of the scene below as possible. Maybe she could see whatever animal had made this new noise. The view had changed. Her scout was more than halfway to this portal. Her eyebrows raised in surprised disbelief. The sad little gremlin was doing better than she expected. Spotting the new animal was forgotten. Dr. Miller sat back on her heels and looked around the room. The green mist filled the space, calm and floating. One glance at the clock showed more than 3 hours had passed since she'd kicked him into the portal. Professor McCullen hadn't been devoured by one of the animals yet? Beginner's luck. It had to be, she convinced herself. Any minute the mist would flow back into the hole, the markings on the scroll would disappear again, and she would have to wait until the next attempt to continue the translation. She checked her watch. She still had some time before he'd make it here, and she was starting to believe he actually would. No sense in wasting time, she thought as she pushed back to her feet and returned to the scroll. Hannah's mind raced to make sense of what was happening to her, of what little she was seeing. Most of it was dark. Some flashes of a glowing silver mist passed across her eyes. The main thought in her mind was the fact that she was still falling and had been doing so way too long for it to not hurt when she landed. Occasionally, she would feel something press against her leg, arm, or back. It was usually followed by a sensation that she was falling in a slightly different direction. She started to sense that she was falling through some kind of tunnel. A pale light started to brighten the darkness. She watched it get bigger, realized it was getting closer. It was light coming through a round circle, and she was heading straight toward it fast. Hannah smiled. She really was in a tunnel. Soon she passed through the circle. The darkness that clouded her sight lifted with it, and she was finally able to look around. Ground, solid ground, was coming at her fast. A startled scream burst out of her mouth. Her arms and legs waved violently in vain to try and slow her fall. Covering her mouth to stop the screaming didn't even enter her mind. Unable to look away from the ground, she started to notice that her descent slowed. A little at first, but she soon calmed and felt like she was floating more than falling. Little Rafi was there, far below, looking up at her. His arms were straight up and his paws were pointed right at her. They followed her descent, stayed pointed right at her until she neared the ground. When she was near enough, Hannah simply extended her foot and gently stepped onto the ground. Unfortunately, her knees were pretty much jello, so instead of holding her up, they crumpled under her and she fell. She lowered her head and rested her cheek against the soft but solid soil under her. "I've never been so glad to touch this in all my life," she admitted. Rafi walked to her, patted her on the head gently with his little paw. Hannah took a few more deep breaths, her trembling muscles relaxed and her heart slowed to a normal pace. It wasn't until then that she trusted herself enough to try and stand again. She pushed up slowly and teetered slightly until she regained her balance. Once she was back on her feet, she looked around. This new place was darker than the last. Thick storm clouds filled the sky. In the dim light, Hannah could see them roll and twist above her. Parts of the thick masses lit up for moments at a time from lightning, and the rumble of thunder echoed all around her. The ground was bare, not a living thing or landmark to break up its flat surface except for a small building in the distance. Hannah squinted her eyes and wondered why it looked so familiar. "What is this place?" she asked, still staring at the building. Silence. "Raffi?" she asked and looked down at him. Only then did she realize her mistake at expecting him to answer when she wasn't looking at him. "This is stage 3," he stated simply. Hannah nodded, even though she had no idea what he meant. Hannah looked back up and pointed at the building. "But what is that?" Her voice trailed off. Had that tree been beside the building this whole time? She squinted her eyes again. Silver mist gathered under one of the tree's outstretched branches and became thicker. Soon a tire swing formed, hanging from the branch. Hannah's breath caught in her throat. She suddenly realized why the building was so familiar. Numbly, she started walking towards it. No surprise to her when the silver mist gathered in a wide and familiar pattern around the building and solidified into a long white fence. Hannah's feet moved faster, knowing now that the building was a house surrounded by the beautiful white fence that she had loved. She started to run as the mist gathered in several places within the fence and formed the images of horses. She didn't notice Rafi running after her, trying to get her attention. She didn't notice him slow when he knew he wouldn't be able to stop her or warn her about what was to come. She didn't see his worried face or the tears that filled his huge eyes. She just ran as fast as she could, not slowing until she neared the gate. She cautiously stepped up to it, hesitantly raised her hand to lift the latch, half expecting it to turn to vapor in her hand. But it was solid. Hannah choked on a sigh of relief as emotion already filled her eyes with tears and caused her chest to spasm. It had been so long since she felt this under her hands. She lifted the latch. The gate squeaked exactly how it used to as she pushed it open. The house, her home, stood in front of her. She stared in awe at the white with green shutters, two-story wood frame house with the wide porch across the front. Her heart started to race. Her feet couldn't wait any longer, and she ran, skipping 2 steps at a time up to the front porch. Her hands couldn't work the screen or the front door fast enough, but soon both gave way and she stepped inside. Inside, the house was bright. Afternoon sun streamed through the windows. Gauze curtains waved at open windows from a gentle breeze. She turned to the left where she knew the mirror would be. Her face from 6 years earlier was staring back. She had the same long hair, only she used to curl it then, still parted to one side and wind-blown from riding home on the bus with the windows down. Her glasses were gone. She hadn't needed them back then, and her nose was straight and perfect. Hannah bared her teeth, showing the 2 rows of metal braces that filled her mouth, the only thing she didn't miss. From the kitchen in the next room, a voice, the voice she would have gladly given anything to hear again, was singing. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. Hannah couldn't get enough air in her lungs. Tears streamed down her face as her mouth tried over and over to say the words her voice refused to give sound to. Finally, she closed her eyes, forced air into her lungs to take a full breath, and tried again. Mom? The shaky word was barely more than a whisper. "What's up, Buttercup?" came the cheerful words back to her, and Hannah's knees nearly buckled. A longing she had spent years trying to ignore shook every part of her body. A silent, anguished cry poured out of her and refused to let her take another breath. It rolled on until she heard footsteps coming toward her from the kitchen. Hannah spun around instantly and wiped tears from her eyes. She took some quick breaths to ready herself for what was to come. "Honey, are you okay?" Her mother's concern sounded with her words. Hannah didn't want this, didn't want to waste whatever this was with sadness or crying. She wanted happy, like things had been before everything fell apart. There wasn't enough time to make sure she was stable before she turned around. The face that was so similar to Catherine's looked back at her, only younger, with brows pulled together in concern. Her long hair was pulled back in a loose braid. She was wearing worn and faded jeans and a t-shirt. Her baby sister Abby balanced on her hip. The chubby 6-month-old was wearing only a diaper and leaning into the woman's shoulder. But this wasn't Catherine. Hannah's control broke, filling her eyes with tears. "It's nothing, Mom. It's just my allergies again," she managed to squeak out. Her mother's eyebrows lowered suspiciously. "Looks more like you've been crying," she deduced. "Are you sure it doesn't have anything to do with that horrible Buzz Jackson pushing you down and pulling your hair again?" Hannah laughed through her tears and started crying again. She totally forgot about that jerk. She could never get anything past her mother. How she missed that. "Come on, kiddo. You can have 2 extra cookies today. I'll get the milk," she soothed as she put her arm around Hannah and gently guided her to the kitchen. Her mother's touch again. The same touch she'd taken for granted all those years. The touch she'd missed whenever she was hurting. The touch she was reminded of every time Catherine tried to get close to her. She finally had it again. Just as she always did, her mother's presence alone eased her pain and slowed the tears. As she entered the kitchen, her mother's arm slipped away and turned to the cupboard to get the glass. Hannah found the large brown owl cookie jar and opened it. She took 3 cookies out and carried them over to the counter. Her mother set the glass in front of Hannah and turned toward the refrigerator. You know, Hannah, boys your age are mean to the girls they like, she warned as she filled the glass with milk. Some never grow out of it, so my best advice is make sure you know a guy inside and out before you let them have your heart. Hannah smiled. The comfort of everything being familiar around her continued to soothe her ravaged nerves. Her breath was still broken up by sobbing hiccups, but they slowly became quiet. Her lower lip, however, never completely stopped quivering. I'll have to remember that, she said shakily, committing every word to memory. Her mother looked at her and smiled. Good, she added before turning around and lowering Abby, now free of the diaper, into the sink full of water. Maylene Johnson then grabbed the baby soap and started scrubbing little Abby from head to toe. Hannah ate her cookies in silence, taking in everything she could, every smell, every sound, trying to imprint everything her mind had started to struggle to remember. Her mother's singing, the smell and taste of her mom's amazing cookies. Abby's happy squeals as her hands excitedly splashed the water. How she would never cry when she was in the water, even when her mother would pour water over her head to rinse away the soap. She was just like a fish, she remembered her parents would say. She was just finishing her last cookie when her mother grabbed a towel and tossed it over her left shoulder. She lifted Abby out of the water, pulled her into her shoulder to wrap the now squirming bundle of arms and legs inside the towel. Hannah pushed away from the counter. I'll do that, Mom, she offered. Maylene struggled with Abby, who was trying to get back into the sink even though the water was nearly gone. How much homework do you have tonight? Her mother asked before she agreed. Hannah smiled. Her mother always asked her that before letting her help with anything around the farm, another thing she'd forgotten. Not much, she fell into her usual vague response. Maylene's eyes squinted into a suspicious glare. How much is not much? She counted, never giving an inch. Just a couple of assignments, she made up and physically squirmed at the lie. She remembered how frustrated she would get with her mother over this. Oh, what she would do to have it all back. However much you have, finish it first, she ordered. But I want to help with Abby and the horses. I know you think I'm too young, but I can do it. You and Dad always get all the fun stuff, she complained. Your age has nothing to do with it, Hannah, her mother countered. I know how much you love the horses and that you think you want to take over the ranch when you get older, but I want you to be able to do anything you want, no matter what it is. A little more studying now will save you a lot of work down the road just in case you change your mind. Maylene walked around the counter as she dried Abby, knowing the further she got from the sink, the less Abby would squirm. Finally, Abby gave up her fight, leaned into her mother's shoulder, and quieted. Hannah reached up and cupped the side of Abby's face. The little one raised away from Maylene's shoulder and reached out for her older sister. Maylene started to pull her away. I could just hold her for a minute while you clean up the bad things, she pleaded one last time. Maylene hesitated just a moment before letting the baby go into Hannah's arms. Abby squealed happily and clapped her little hands. Hannah reached for the radio on the desk by the door to the dining room and switched it on. The oldies station it was always tuned to started to play My Girl. Hannah danced with Abby and sang along with the song. Maylene joined in, hopping around the floor to the music as she gathered the bath things, and all 3 girls danced around the kitchen, laughing at how badly they both sang. When it got to the second chorus, Hannah's father Luke burst into the kitchen door and belted really loud. I guess you'd say, what can make me feel this way, my girls? He yelled more than sang, but they all laughed anyway. He took his wife and started dancing around the kitchen. When they neared Hannah and Abby, the whole family gathered into a group huddle, dancing, singing as loud as they could, laughing, and little Abby squealing and laughing the whole time. Time seemed to slow as they moved. Hannah remembered how it felt to feel safe, loved, happy. It was perfect. Then the song ended. "Let me take her, young lady," her father said as he lifted Abby out of her arms. Hannah's heart started to ache the moment her arms were empty. "Your mother was right. You need to finish your homework. You can do whatever you want, but only when it's all done," he said firmly. Hannah felt the painful lump rise again in her throat. She didn't have any homework. She hadn't just gotten home from school, and she wasn't 12 years old anymore. None of this was real. Hannah forced herself to keep the smile she had on her face. Her eyes filled with tears again as she looked at the floor and she turned to leave. When she got to the door leading to the front room, she paused and turned back at them. "How can I make you proud of me?" she asked, hoping it would help her find her way without them. Maylene and Luke looked at each other. Maylene started to talk before she looked back at Hannah. "We want you to find your peace. Don't search for happiness. It won't lead you anywhere. Peace is harder to find, but worth the effort. And don't do it to make us proud of you. We already are," she said simply. The lump grew bigger and more painful. Tears started to fall. "But what if you died? What would you want me to do?" She wasn't sure how she'd gotten the words out. Luke looked concerned as he watched her. "We would want you to let us go and live your life. There's only one person that you're guaranteed to be with your entire life, and that is you. You have your story to write, your demons to vanquish, your dragons to slay, and your unique way of doing it all. Whatever happens to us, we'll always be rooting for you. You may not always be able to see us or hear us, but when you're quiet, Hannah, I promise you'll feel it," he said, perfectly serious, no mocking. Hannah nodded, didn't even realize her feet were moving until she had her arms around her family again. They held her close for some time, but it wasn't long enough. It would never be long enough. She felt her father's hand pat her back. "You have to let us go, kiddo. We have work we need to do too," he said just before kissing her forehead. Hannah held them a moment longer before letting go. She backed away with tears streaking down her face and her lips trembling. "I left my backpack outside. I'll just go get it." Her parents smiled. Luke looped an arm around Maylene's shoulders. Abby squealed and clapped before snuggling into her father's arm. Hannah took one last moment, hoping to burn the memory into her brain and never lose it. She finally turned the doorknob and walked through. The moment she stepped back outside, it was dark again. The same thick clouds filled the sky. The same rolling thunder echoed all around her. The same barren landscape stretched just beyond the fence. Raffi was sitting on the porch by the steps, but jumped to his feet the moment he saw her. His little face and large eyes looked at her with concern. He started toward her, then stopped, looked around, backed up a little, again seeming like he didn't know what to do. Hannah leaned her back against the door as an emotional dam burst inside her. All the anger, all the pain, every ounce of anguish she locked inside herself broke free at the same moment and rushed out of her mouth in the loudest, most terrifying and sorrowful sound she'd ever made. As the sound escaped her mouth, it took all her strength, all her will, all the control she tried so hard to keep since she lost her parents and sent her crumpling to the floor. Another cry followed, this one a little quieter, but it still felt like it was ripping her apart. Her walls had crumbled. Every emotion she ignored or pushed away rolled through her until she wasn't sure she could bear it anymore. Still the emotions came. Hannah sobbed and cried so hard that sometimes it was a fight to take in a breath, and her whole body shook as she let the emotions go. Time went by. Hannah feared she'd never be able to stop. The spasms continued, sometimes quieting before another wave of memories flooded her mind. Eventually, though, they finally quieted. The tempest inside her stilled into a raw calm. All her pain finally released. Hannah felt completely drained as she rested her head against the porch floorboards. Her breathing calmed and her mind cleared for the first time in years. Her parents' words floated through her head. She had demons to vanquish and dragons to slay. A bit more literal than her parents had intended. Very little of the last few hours made any sense to her, but she'd already lived through the worst thing that could ever happen to her. The numb calm allowed some of her strength to return, and she was able to push herself up from the porch floorboards. It wasn't until then that she noticed Raffi had stood by her the whole time, patting her head while she cried. In spite of what she'd just been through, this small kindness made her smile. "Thank you," she said weakly. Raffi slowly tapped his paws together and nodded as he backed away from her slightly. She looked at Raffi, the hard cries still making her breathing come in gulps as she talked. You said that before, that this was stage 3, she started to question. Yes, Raffi answered. How many stages are there? At least 4. Hannah wanted to curse. What was the first one? She was suddenly unwilling to go anywhere else until she got some answers. There is a green fog nearly impossible to get through unless help is requested, he explained. That didn't make any sense. She remembered the green fog, but she hadn't asked for anything except for Dr. Miller's help. Oh, that must have been it. Raffi nodded. What was the second stage? She asked, the hiccups starting to quiet. It was a planet where all the most dangerous creatures ever created are kept. They are considered too dangerous to have on planets with humans, since humans only want to control animals or destroy what they can't control. Those animals are too intelligent and have endangered human populations on some planets, so they are kept there. But those hand movements, don't they control the animals? She asked. Raffi shook his head. Every animal recognizes a higher intelligence and will respect it. Humans are always given dominion over the creatures on their planet, but they always take that to mean they have the right to control them or destroy them. Dominion really means that all creatures are in their care. Once the creatures know that humans recognize that, they will lose their aggression towards them. Hannah nodded. She wasn't sure she believed him, but she nodded. That cry of pain before we started to run, she remembered. It must have been the one that Dr. Miller sent. They always kill their way through. Hannah's head turned and she eyed Raffi suspiciously. But if the animals are that aggressive, wouldn't they just kill him? Raffi smiled a little. They've killed several that she sent, but she learns from each failed attempt. They can kill, they just need to keep moving. It takes time for the other animals to discover they're dead, then track the hunter. And each additional kill masks the hunter's trail for a little while after the death. If he keeps moving, he will make it to this portal. What about this stage? She was a little afraid to ask. Raffi's smile fell. This one shows the scout what they want most. It's usually wealth or power. Many don't move on because they quickly find out they can't take it with them into the next stage. Scout? Hannah asked, not understanding the term. Dr. Miller is the anchor, keeps the portal open in a way. Another person needs to run the course, her scout. At least that's how she usually explains it to the others who have run the stages. Really, she's just too afraid to run it herself, he explained. Hannah's mouth turned into a half smile. Dr. Miller isn't her real name, is it? She asked something she suspected from the first time she tried to talk to Dr. Miller. Raffi shook his head. No, she's had several. The scroll she uses to open the portals and start the stages, she stole it from a wealthy man who's been trying to find her ever since. She keeps moving, changing her name and appearance. So far, she's managed to stay ahead of him. Why did she come to Wyndham? It doesn't seem like a great place to hide, Hannah countered. With all the wealthy families represented in it, the school was regularly put under a microscope. After each failed attempt, she has to find the location of the next portal. They are specific. She doesn't have a choice. Hannah remembered the head injury she'd received from the good doctor and started to put a few things together. Specific as in only that office specific? Raffi nodded. So she's the one that attacked Mrs. Lewis just to get access to her office. she recognized. Hannah was starting to feel sick. Rafi hesitated a moment, then nodded. Hannah didn't have any more questions. There wasn't anything else she wanted to know. She'd gotten herself into whatever this was and put herself on the radar of probably the second scariest person she'd ever known. She developed the distinct feeling that the less she knew about what was coming, the better. Raffi waited quietly by her side and just watched her for several minutes. He finally stepped a little closer to her and asked, "Your family, that's what you want most?" Hannah nodded. Fresh tears filled her eyes again. Her walls had crumbled and she didn't have enough strength to put them back up, but without them she couldn't control her emotions quite yet. "It was a drunk driver that took my parents when I was 12. I was so excited that night they let me take care of Abby while they had a night out together. The cops came and told me. Social workers brought blankets and stuffed animals. They were nice, and it made me feel like everything would be okay." Hannah let out a bitter laugh and continued. "They didn't let me go to the same home as Abby. I ran away. I did some not so legal things to try and get enough money to take care of her. Later, I was caught and had to return to foster care. They told me that there had been some kind of accident while I was gone, that Abby had drowned. Of all the things to happen to her." Emotion stole her voice for a few moments again. She breathed in hard and quieted herself. "Considering everything I went through in the system, it's probably better. She most likely left happy." "I'm so sorry you lost your family." The words sounded in Hannah's head, this time without her looking at Raffi. Hannah half smiled at Raffi's new trick. "How'd you do that?" she asked. "Actually, you did it," he corrected. Hannah's sad eyes pulled together in confusion. "What do you mean?" "I can't do this unless you open yourself to it. Up until now you haven't been, which is why I had to look you in the eyes. They don't call them the windows to the soul for nothing." Hannah chuckled a little. "So you were talking to me through my windows?" "In a manner of speaking," he agreed. "And now?" she asked, wanting to know the difference. "You've let me in," he answered. Hannah nodded, not really understanding the answer, but getting tired of asking questions, getting tired of feeling, of remembering, of thinking she needed to move. Hannah raised to her feet, still feeling shaky but forcing herself forward. "So where do we go from here?" she asked. As soon as she finished the question, she heard a swirling sound off to her left. A dark hole appeared in the sky. At that same moment, silver mist started lifting off the fence around the house. Hannah flinched away. "How are we going to hide from Dr. Miller this time? We don't have anything to use as cover," she worried. "Dr. Miller would have put the tracker on this scout. Until he enters this stage, she won't be able to see any of this," he explained. Anna smiled. At least one step in this trip would not fill her with dread. She watched a minute longer as the whole fence disintegrated into the air. The tree and tire swing followed. Hannah closed her eyes tight, remembering again every sound, every smell, every laugh and smile that she'd just seen, and hoped she'd be able to remember it forever. When she opened her eyes, the tree was gone. The mist started rising from the porch as she started down the steps. Hannah didn't look back once her foot hit the ground and they walked toward the portal. She knew there would be nothing left. Everything she could keep was already with her.